excited that I get to wear also a Britney Spears mic. I might dance later, so look forward to that. So hi everybody, my name's Megan. I'm here to talk to you guys today about setting yourself apart. I've actually got an experience in product marketing for the last 10 years doing all of the things. Growth hacking, product marketing awareness, all that fun stuff. I'm now with Intel Security, and essentially my goal and my focus and what I do on a daily basis is focus on growth for companies. So before I get started, does everybody know the difference between traction and growth? No? Maybe? Yes? Oh, okay, cool. That's good, because I made a slide where we're going to go over it together. So essentially, my job is, again, to focus on growth, and it's a few-phase process. So you start off with the world, and the world is that 7.4 billion people that have devices and unique things that they love, or like random hobbies and live different places, different lifestyles. And your job as a product or as a company is to get traction as a beginning point. And essentially, that's being able to identify the right audience, get them in, and understand, are these people going to be interested in the product? Are they going to use it? And kind of get them in at that first level. Transition is where you actually get to do the optimization and the testing, and this is actually my favorite part. So this is when you've said, okay, these are generally the people that are interested in what we're going on, what kind of messaging, what kind of product, what kind of onboarding, and testing and optimization to actually get them in to be a loyal and active user, and potentially to the point where they're going to recommend it to their friends, because those are really valuable users. And then growth. Growth is the last stage where it's the easy one. You know what levers to kind of pull to drive big growth for your company so you can get those quality users, you can grow the product, and eventually be what Silicon Valley is calling a unicorn, all those other magical things in life. But that's the only theory that I'm going to be talking to you about today, because I am an experience girl, in the sense that I feel like all of my learnings as a product marketer have stemmed from pretty special experiences in growing into my career. And so I'm actually going to be sharing 3 stories with you guys and some things that I felt, at least in my career, and how I've pivoted, how they've had an impact on my life and helped make me a better marketer. So hopefully you don't make the same mistakes, but then also some insight to the things that I do. And I'm literally going to start all the way at the beginning. So hi, Megan. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. I grew up there with my family. I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters, and we homeschooled growing up. And I know what you're thinking, the first question. So yes, the answer is yes. I was the most popular in my class, the most athletic, and the most talented throughout my entire, I guess, kindergarten to grade 12 schooling. And so with my family, homeschooling is pretty special in the sense that you can learn whatever you want. You wake up in the day and you decide, I decide to be a marine biologist or a rocket scientist, and you have the opportunity to just learn and grow from that, which is really exciting. But one of the things that I really struggled with growing up was the fact that I was always different. It was really hard to relate with people, and I had no way of really saying, I can fit in, or I'm like everybody else, and that was incredibly stressful and frustrating. I so wanted to be just like everybody else. And so as I continued through my homeschooling, I managed to graduate, homeschooling grad, and I thought, this is great, my chance to be like everybody else, I'm going to apply for university. And I was super excited about this. I was applying everywhere. I had all these amazing dreams that I was going to do all this epic stuff. And I finally got accepted into a few universities that I like and got in. I had my backpack. I was all stoked to go, 45 minutes early, first classroom experience ever. And the lights were off and the professor came in. It was awkward. But I managed to get all the way through the first semesters learning and growing and understanding, okay, this is what school is like. But it was actually way more difficult than I thought. Not only was the learning speed very different from what I was used to all growing up. To start off, there are tests. I had never written an exam in my life. And so not only did I have terrible test anxiety, but I found it incredibly difficult to adjust this new timeline of being set in a schedule in the way that you had to learn. And it was really difficult to adjust. By the time midterms came, I actually failed all of my midterms. Big red Fs right on the cover. And I felt like that was kind of a sign, Megan, this isn't for you. Maybe you should just go back to, figuring out life in a different way. I had a professor pull me aside. He gave me an extra 10 hours of homework a week, which I'm incredibly grateful for because it actually helped me get through the first semester so I could continue on with my degree. 4 years later, I got to graduation. It was absolutely amazing. finally, it was like the most exciting thing ever, where I had the chance to like be like everyone else. And then like for the last year of your school, everyone asks you like, you know, that terrible question, what are you gonna do with your life after you graduate? And it's like, okay, I'm trying to like figure that out still. And essentially out of all of this effort and me trying to be like everybody else, I kind of picked the worst time, because now everybody is in the exact same position. I'm just another fish in the sea trying to get out there, set myself apart, and be recognized to get a job and figure out what I wanted to do afterwards. What made it even worse was that I thought that university would help me figure out exactly what I wanted to do, but instead I was completely clueless in launching into my career with this decision that I was supposed to make and know exactly what I was supposed to do with literally no idea, no background. I had no idea where to start. Now, I was a little bit lucky compared to some of the other students that I went with. I had a few job offers when I did graduate. But even with that, it was really challenging, because I sat there and I go, you know, how do I know which job is the right job? How do I know which one is the right one? And so like any millennial, I was complaining about it. And I was talking actually with my mentor about, you know, what should I do with my life with these jobs? How do I know which one to pick? And he looked at me kind of sarcastically, and he's like, well, Maeghan, why don't you work all of the jobs? And I was like, you know what? I should work all of the jobs. That's the greatest idea. So I go running home to go talk to my parents, and I'm like, guess what, Mom and Dad? I'm not going to go work anywhere. I'm going to go work for free. I'm going to start this project that I'm super stoked about called Project 112, an initiative where I interned at 10 different companies in 112 days across North America. So you can imagine, my parents are like, well, that's not a job, and or you're getting paid, and or what are you doing with your life was still a recurring question. But essentially, I was so excited about this idea of a project that I felt could have a really big impact on my life and potentially help others. So as any project starts from the very beginning, my parents and family were incredibly supportive to help me get me on board. I paid through all of my schooling growing up, so they're like, you know what, you can figure it out, you'll get there. So I started off my project, and you know, I thought about everything. I had this huge grid where it had all of the places that I wanted to work. I wanted to see what it was like to work for a product-based company versus an agency, a big corporation versus like a startup, a nonprofit versus a profit. And I built this entire grid, and I'm all excited, and I'm starting to list all the companies, the dream companies that I'd want to do this initiative with. And I get on the phone, I start calling them up, and I get my first person on the call. It's like, hi, I'm Maeghan Smulders. I'm so excited. I'm doing this thing where I don't work or get paid to work, but I work and I learn, and it's going to be great. And it was all over the place. And this person literally hung up the phone on me. So like, confidence booster, great. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll do it again. I'll get better. So I call up the next person. So hi, I'm Maeghan Smulders. I'm doing this project. It's about interning and figuring out what to do with life, and it's going to be really great, and hang up. And that happened for the first like 2 weeks of trying to pitch the project. And I started to freak out. I'm like, okay, you know, maybe this idea is crazy. Maybe nobody's going to buy in, and you know, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And at the time, I didn't have motivational figures like Leonardo DiCaprio in my life. So I thought to myself, you know, Maeghan, you're just going to have to give yourself the confidence. You're going to be able to do this. So I called one more time. It was this female CEO. She was in Silicon Valley. And I started pitching her the idea. It's like, okay, so hi, I'm Maeghan Smulders. As much confidence I could give without crying on the phone, thinking she was going to hang up on me too. I get through, and it's like, okay, so this is what I want to do. And she cuts me off in mid-sentence. She's like, whoa, Maeghan. And I was like, okay, what? She goes, do you even know who you're pitching to? I think that you're the person that I'm pitching this to right now. And she's like, no, you got to take a step back. She goes like, you're all over the place. You're not able to communicate the value of what you're trying to do and why this is worth my time. And that's when I started thinking, okay, I need to, you know, dig in deeper and know who I'm pitching to. So with this story, I learned about the importance of finding your audience. And so it's applicable in absolutely any single project that I work on today, whether it's pitching for a job that you're trying to get to, whether it's pitching a product and you're trying to get out there. You have to start off with knowing who you're targeting to. It's so important to get them into the funnel and make yourself relatable. So that was one of the big stories and life lessons that I learned there. The project itself continued to grow. The next day, I reworked all of my pitch, my website. I had a donor page versus a sign up, a mission vision, all of these different things on the page to actually help explain what I was doing. And the next day, I was able to pitch for 5 hours, and I got 3 of my internships lined up on the bat from that. So incredibly powerful, even just to step back and on any project, make sure you start off with knowing your audience. Story 2. Okay, so shortly after the interning project, I had to figure out where I wanted to go afterwards. So the 110 days go by. I had the chance to go work at some amazing companies from Facebook and Google, travel from LA to Toronto, New York, and I decided that I actually wanted to move to Montreal. And so I settled here, got all ready to go, and I actually joined a local startup called Passwordbox. At the time, I was the only girl out of the 8 boy employees, and it was a pretty big growing and learning experience. Essentially, I was the only non-developer, and I was focused on all of the things. To drive users in, to get them excited, to download the product, to rate, review, and all of those other fun things. And for those who don't know, Passwordbox, it was an application. It stores all your passwords on your phones, your computers, and fills them in. It's a password manager. And so, as you can imagine, as a startup, we had this mission, this vision. We were going to be the next billion-dollar company, and we were super stoked about it. So everyone on the team, every day, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. But with every growing startup, there's a point in life in which you need to raise money. And so this was a really exciting part in my career where I actually got to go and pitch a bunch of venture capitalists to raise money for Passwordbox. And essentially, you go to these different groups, and you have to tell them about how great your product is. But at the end of the day, they essentially just put you on a grid. And they say, here's all the other products that are out there. Here's where you compare, and this is what you're doing. Okay, so we're listening to all this feedback from all these VCs, and we ended up raising money so we could keep going on the track that we were. And we're like, okay, so these are all of the things that we need to focus on now. And so all of a sudden, we went on this crazy tangent where we started to build features and functions and look at different ways that people were doing things and building them into the product. And we kind of turned into this pocket knife where we kind of forgot a little bit about who we were, what made us unique, and the true advantage that we gave to our users. And so taking it back a step, we started to implement a bunch of different things. We started to do a lot more A/B testing to figure things out so that we could at least figure out what was happening in life. But what we turned into was this kind of, my analogy is like the plastics. We kind of turned into a plastic, and we're like, what's happening with our life? Nobody likes the plastics. So anyway, we had to refigure ourselves out and come back to the beginning. But we went back to knowing our people. And so through these A/B tests, for example, one of the ones that we did was a lot of the companies at the time were having big red text, and they were having security messages all in the front. And so, as a test, we had that first. But then we started to do a comparison to say, okay, let's learn from our users and grow with them and figure this out. And so we had another page. It was just a video to explain and a download button. And we looked at the two. And what we realized is that people were freaking out when they saw the security messages. They were interested in the product, but as soon as we had all of this text on security, they were quadruple thinking about what was happening and had to reconsider and do more research and went download the product. And so taking a step forward and saying, okay, let's make sure that we're making this as simple as possible to learn from our users as well as optimize and grow with them. I'm not saying that your users always know what they want. I think that there's a lot of influence you have as a company, as a product to bring in. But it's incredibly important to remember that you're unique, you're building this product, and sometimes your users will have to adjust and grow. But also, don't focus on what everyone else is doing. Pick the best things and then make it your own and move from there. So with that said, story 2 is about growing and learning from your users. Okay, story 3. So after a great 2 years with Passwordbox, we did some pretty incredible things. We won Best App at CES, which is the largest consumer electronics show. We got to go up on stage. We met Shaquille O'Neal. He's actually way taller in person, surprisingly, and got to drive millions of downloads towards the product, amazing growth. And we really wanted to, eventually, our goal is to get rid of passwords. And we had the opportunity to meet this really great company called Intel. A year and a half after that, we were acquired by Intel. So this is the whole team here. And it was really exciting. I mean, we got to a point where we believed that with Intel, we're able to actually get rid of the password completely. And so from there, we decided to build a new combined product called TrueKey by Intel Security. And it's essentially the same thing as Passwordbox, but it uses biometrics. So now you can log in with your face or your fingerprint, a device, other contextual things instead of passwords. And the goal, again, is to get rid of them completely. And so we launched this product last year at CES, the same consumer show. And we opened it up in a limited release because we were really conscious that we wanted to focus on the customer journey. We wanted to get them involved in building this product in its early stages to help us as we built it out further. And so we opened up this limited release. We started bringing on tens of thousands of users. There was crazy growth. And like launching any product, we were a little bit late in actually launching it. So, we're sitting there going, okay, well, how can we make sure that these people stay involved and that they want to get it, they want to stay committed to the product? So I have this idea. I'm like, guys, why don't we just email all the users and tell them, like, we really appreciate them, like, it's coming soon, we're bringing people on board, a little bit slower, but we appreciate you waiting. So, okay, there's a consensus, we're going to do it. So we sent out this email, and it got a 92% open rate, which, like, in email marketing is unheard of. Like, that just, like, never happens. And so, like, this was incredibly exciting. Everyone's like, this is what we need to do. This is so amazing. So I did, like, the one thing that you should never do, which is essentially all of the things. And we went into this, like, crazy email, what I now look at as, like, spamming initiative, where it was like, we love you guys so much. This is so great. You should share the product. You should download. You should do all these things. And our conversion rate just kept opening and opening and opening. And everybody was reading our emails. And we're like, we're nailing it. This is awesome. And then one day, I get an email from a user who I actually referred to get onto the wait list. And it says, Dear Maeghan. It's like, oh, great. He's probably using the product. This is really awesome. And I ask him, I say, how's your experience? How's it going? And, this long response back is, Maeghan, I was really excited about this product, joined onto the wait list, and essentially, I've been waiting a few weeks. I got one email, okay, great, it was great to hear from you guys, but now essentially you're abusing, the right to communicate with me by spamming me with things like refer to my friends. Why would I refer to my friends if I haven't even gotten the product yet? Why would I, tweet about it and say that I'm on the list when I haven't even been able to get on? Like, I feel like you guys aren't considering the position that I'm in. That's when, I had to do that awkward walk into the office and be like, oh my God, what have I done? And it was brutal because he was totally right. We were completely abusing the users in the sense that, the numbers were really great, but we weren't considering, the entire relationship that we're trying to build with these users. And so the story 3 is about building relationships. And I say this because, going back to that graph about growth, essentially you're building a relationship with your users. First, you're going to get them hooked on the idea that maybe this product is for them. They're excited to get involved. So they jump on, they get in, great. Then you figure out what messaging and everything to get them further down the funnel. And that's where you're essentially building a relationship with this user. You're getting them excited about using the product, that they're going to do great things with it. It's going to make their life a whole lot easier. And I have the best friend analogy as another example because when the world you meet somebody at the park and you're like, oh great, we're going to be best friends, and you start to hang out, and if you're that girl that texts that person every single day or is knocking on their door I'm just so excited to hang out with you, amongst other things, they're not going to call you back. I'm sorry. So you need to build a relationship with your users, and one that's give and take. Gary Vaynerchuk, I'll write it out. But he's got this great book, and it's specifically on social media, but I believe that it applies to everything from product relations, but even to yourself. When you're building a relationship with somebody, when you're constantly punching them with your product push and all the things that are really great, there's no give and take to the relationship, and it's incredibly one-sided. And so it's really important to take that step back and consider, okay, how can we have that open dialogue to make people feel like they're a part of it? Get really excited about your product and eventually get to the point where they're out being like, this is my cool best friend, you should totally go and hang out with her. So I actually went really fast because that timer helped me. I have a minute left. But these are some experiences that I had throughout growing as a product marketer. Being able to work in a bunch of different places, building products, launching products, both Password Box I've been able to launch out of beta to drive millions of users or downloads worldwide, which is pretty exciting. We've also got some cool teammates here that I will introduce you to afterwards. But as a closing, those are 3 lessons that I learned as a product marketer. I hope that they're valuable for you, and that marketing is really exciting in the sense that you get to be creative, you get to learn, you get to optimize, and essentially you get to see results. And being able to bring that into a product and to help grow and drive results is incredibly exciting. And so that's all I have. Thank you so much. So now there's 5 minutes of questions, so I ended on time. So the question was, what did I start saying to the companies when I was applying for the internships? And so essentially, I started off actually with a little bit of a story. It was, you believe it, hard to believe, but everyone's pain point in life when they graduate, there's 9 out of 10 times people don't actually know what they want to do. And a lot of times when I was actually pitching companies, I was talking about how I had this dream to be able to, one, be confident in my decision, and I shouldn't have to fit in the mold, that I should be able to make a difference, and I want you to be a part of my journey, sponsor it, I'll help promote it, and all these other things. And people were able to connect with that. I actually had a 45-year-old gentleman reach out to me. He had been working at a marketing agency his whole career. And he goes, Maeghan, I just did it because it was the first job that they asked me, and I don't want to be here. And so he said he quit his job on the spot after hearing my story and went off to go and do other things that he was actually interested in, which was like crazy, because like keep in mind at the time I'm like 23 years old, so I'm like, holy man. But it was about being able to connect why this mission was important to me and how they could get involved. And so making that really clear so that there was a call to action for them to participate. Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah. Thank you, Maeghan, for giving us such a wonderful speech.
Thank you.
And my question is, what have you thought about taking out the passwords, the drawbacks?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure there are many drawbacks socially, and have you thought of it? And can you share?
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny because passwords are seemingly the most boringest thing ever, but I love them. So it's a great question. So essentially our goal with Intel is to actually get rid of the password by replacing it with other ways to log in. And the problem is that people are really bad with passwords. One, they can't remember them. They've got multiple devices that they need to actually like input them and type them in on, that they need to have access to all the time, maybe when they're on an airplane or vice versa. So there's no convenient way. And on top of that, the way that people cope with passwords is even worse because they use the same password on multiple accounts, or they make it really easy. Like you guys, I'm sure you see the reports, it's like 2015, like most used password is password, or like the hint is like what the password is. And that makes it really easy for a hacker to be able to come in and take the information. And so with Intel, we have this idea of a 3-phased approach. And it was the same with Password Box, which is why it's really exciting that we're together on this. But essentially, like number one, today, we're a password manager. We do those basic functions that a password manager does, but it's protected with even more security. So typical password managers have one password to get in, and believe it or not, people still forget that one. You can log in with your face, your fingerprint, a device. I think we have up to 5 different factors you can actually log in with. And then 2 is to actually work with all of the various companies and places to actually replace it. And when you're a big company like Intel, there's a lot of opportunity to do great things like that. So it's not going to happen right away. Like I think that the passwords are definitely going to be around still. Like I think there's something like 2.3 billion websites that will have to, and apps that have to like consider the change. I think it's still like 10 years out, but making those steps forward and being able to work with manufacturers. I mean, the fact that my phone's not in my pocket, that's the microphone. The fact that phones have like the fingerprint readers and biometrics are much more accessible, you'll continue to see a trend like that. And I think, there's hope. We're not going to have to remember passwords anymore.
A lot of questions.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for your speech. On a marketing perspective, what is the difference, the major difference that you've seen between doing marketing to sell for customers and doing marketing to sell to other businesses?
So hugely different. So with businesses specifically, it goes back to kind of that sales pitch I had, which is the why there's value for a business. Because essentially the business is the one that has the customers that eventually they're going to be helping, or if it's internally the employees or things like that. So being able to sell them, it's a lot more tactful and logistical and like just real sense, like this is what we do. Whereas with consumers, it's much different. There's a story aspect to it. You need to be able to say that, hey, you have all of these things that you're seeing and aware of right now. This is either going to help you do one thing or make your life a little bit better, or some random app that changes your face to a monkey that's really hilarious. But being able to say, like, you know, like, it's a really great app. It's called Masquerade. I love it. But anyway, essentially, you know, it's a different type of message in the sense that it's tactful versus explaining the why and getting people to see how that's going to make their life better.
Hi. So you've worked for big companies in Silicon Valley and traveled in New York and all those cities. What made you, so for all of us who are going out of university and we have this question where we're like, okay, I want to work for a great big corporation company, it's the name on the CV, but then I want the experience of a startup that it could bring it to me. So what advice would you have for all of us in that situation?
Great question. So as I continue to get older and I don't like to talk about it, what I realize is that when you're young, especially right out of university, you have the best opportunity to make what I call mistakes or create opportunity for yourself. So with my interning project, you know, if I did that now, you know, it's a completely different story. There's a lot of other things I have to think of logistically. I'm located here. I have like a permanent residence. You know, if I had a dog, amongst other things, like it's harder the older you get because people have this tendency to plant, which is great. But when you're younger, you have that opportunity to kind of explore and do more, and you have the wonderful fallback of your family and friends. As you get older, they're kind of like, dude, get out of the house. You're like 90. So like, so I think being able, going back to it, I mean, I consider my project like a startup that I started. Having to do everything from the PR pitching to the idea generation to the sales to the fundraising. I had to raise money for it. When you're young, there's a lot more opportunity to make those types of things happen. Corporate life, and actually like being able to adjust to this too, one of the big things that I learned from a lot of the bigger companies too is your role is very, very specific. If you look at a job description, it's essentially like you are going to be doing X. A friend of mine who works at Facebook, his job is literally to design the buttons every single day. You do all of the buttons. And like, that's really exciting. But, you know, at a startup, like I showed you some of the things I was working on, I was all over the place. And so for a young person being able to say, I have experience in all these things, I think personally it helped me a lot as I move forward in my career because I was able to pull reference to many other things and learn a lot more. But it's not for everybody. The big brand, the big companies too, you're surrounded by amazing, intelligent people that also potentially could help network later on in your career too if you're not really quite sure what you want to do. So I think it's based on your personal path, you know, like, are you set gun-ho and you know exactly what you want to do, or maybe you want to learn some more things in this space. But if you know exactly, maybe having the big company and the brand reputation is going to help you in the further run. But I think those are kind of the things to consider about it. Yeah.
Hi, Maeghan. As another homeschooler, it's great to see you today. I know, yes, another one.
You were also the most popular, right?
Oh, of course,
okay, obviously.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my question for you is, I remember going through and graduating and finding your first job incredibly difficult and stressful. But we no longer really live in a world where your first job becomes the job you have till retirement. Mm-hmm. It used to be like for my dad and my grandparents, you're in the job for 20 years. You have that loyalty. But now times have changed, and the average person now is expected 2 to 4 years, maybe more, maybe less. Mm-hmm. How are you applying what you did to get to your current dream job to get you to your next dream job?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I totally agree with you. My dad has been in the same job for like 40 years, which is like crazy. And even when I have these discussions with him, he's always like, you know, have you ever considered just staying in one spot? And it's like, well, no, not really, ever. No, I think that's a great question. So, you know, specifically, I think as like an individual growing into their career, there's 3 things that are incredibly important to me, and one of them is the people that I work with is absolutely number one. I think people are what define you. They mentor you. They grow. And so when you pick a job, regardless of, you know, it's your first, third, fifth, whatever, people are incredibly important to help develop you as an individual. And I think, too, depending on the company or where you're working, if you think you're going to be there forever, great, that's awesome. But also, it's, again, your chance to kind of explore and see what you're really interested in and want to do. And so when you have those great people kind of influencing you, you've got a great opportunity to kind of learn those skills internally and think, you know, this is what I'm learning now. What do I really want to learn? But then also mentors or people that you look up to, looking at their career path or looking at the skills that they have could potentially kind of give you direction where you want to go next. And then the last one is, you know, like at the end of the day, everyone has shitty work that they do. Like, I do things that I don't like all the time. But being able to kind of balance and say, you know, here's some of the things that I don't like, but being also able to speak up and say, hey, I'm interested in learning this now. Can you help get me the tools to do it? So I think between those three, you can figure out a good path to keep growing and moving to the different places as you go.
So we're out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.